I'm Dan Paulnock from Minneapolis. You're listening to Fresh Air Community Radio, KFAI 90.3 FM HD Minneapolis and 106.7 FM St. Paul. Radio without boundaries.
You are listening to Right On Radio on KFAI, 90.3 FM in Minneapolis and 106.7 FM in St. Paul, and streaming live on the web at kfai.org. I'm Paul Van Dyke.
And I'm Jesse Hausman. Tonight on Right On Radio, we speak with Arlo Hennings about his new memoir, Guitarlo, which details a decades-long journey with connections to people like Allen Ginsberg and Hunter S. Thompson. His teenage years were spent in Minnesota, and he now resides in Indonesia. Indonesia. There we go.
You got it? And I'm Liz Olds. We also talk with Greg Hewitt about his new poetry collection, Blind Sight. He's also the author of the acclaimed collections Dark Acre, The Eros Conspiracy, Red Suburb, and To Collect the Flesh. And he is a professor of English at Carleton College.
Remember, you can pledge your support for this station at any time by visiting our website, kfai.org, and clicking on the Support Us button. In the meantime, we've got Arlo Hennings and Greg Hewitt, plus your What's Happening calendar of literary events. So stay tuned for Right On Radio.
On my way back to the limo headquarters, dispatch buzzed me. A group of VIPs in the Kingdom of Prince needed a ride to a reception at the First Avenue nightclub. I headed back out in the fast lane. I pulled up to a purple-painted house with a large purple windmill in the backyard. Two people came out the front door of the stately but not extravagant house. I opened the door for the couple. I'd never met Prince up close before, and his real height was not hidden by his platform shoes. I was 5 feet 7 inches tall, and maybe his head touched the bottom of my chin. He smiled and thanked me. I loved his purple suit. It was a cross between Disney and porn fantasy. His sexy date, Carmen Electra, the glamour model, looked good in anything. I think one of her boobs was larger than Prince's head. She followed Prince into the back seat. I jumped behind the wheel. The perfume inside the limo was thicker than a Minnesota summer night. "Where would you like to go, Mr. Prince?" I caught myself blushing. I knew stories about Prince because my wife's cousin was St. Paul Peterson, the lead singer in one of Prince's side bands called The Family. The two parted ways in a legal dispute, but St. Paul was in her purple camp during the heyday of Purple Rain. Whether my songwriters liked Prince personally was besides the point. All musicians I knew respected him for his ability and originality. I passed no judgment if he was a prima donna to work for. "First Avenue, backstage door," Prince answered. On the way, Prince and Electra made small talk, much of which was about celebrities, until Prince changed the topic to business, and my ear was now the steering wheel. I forgot to raise the vanity glass divider between the front and back seats. He didn't notice that I could hear everything. "Do you like the name of my new band, the New Power Generation?" Prince asked Electra. "It's cute," she giggled, "just like you." Prince sighed. "I'm really fed up with my record company, Warner Brothers. They want to control everything I do. They're slave drivers, and I'm their nigger." "Do you have any ideas what You can do, Electra said. If they want Prince, they can have him. Maybe I will give them the rights to my name. And damn it, Prince complained. What will you do without your name? She asked. What will I do without you? Prince shot back. I looked into my rearview mirror and they were making out. I thought the timing awkward to butt in and ask for a job. So I kept my thoughts funky, set on the music, Raspberry Beret. I hummed my favorite song by Prince. I pulled the super stretch into the garage behind First Avenue. Several security guards were waiting for my royal couple. I opened the door, and they were escorted off to his private booth above the danceteria. Hey, how do I get paid? I asked one of the guards. Figure it out, he shrugged. The next day, I called the manager at Prince's Paisley Park Studios. The manager apologized and dispatched payment for the limo and another check for me. It was signed by Prince in the amount of $500. Next to his name, he made a little glyph. That night was the most money I had ever made driving limo.
Thanks. That was Arlo Hennings, and it's difficult to break down all the many things you've done into a simple bio, but some of the many things you have done are be a limo driver for Prince, for example. You've been Sean Phillips' manager, and you've also live in Indonesia and currently are managing the critically acclaimed Balinese pianist Eric Sandi. And basically your guitar and your entrepreneurial spirit has drawn you across the country and as far afield as South Africa and Bali. So welcome, Arlo.
Thank you very much, Liz. And I can't tell you how wonderful it is to be back at KFAI. I was here about 32 years ago in 1985. I was at the Walker Church.
During the Walker Church days.
Yeah, we used to hang out there, and we did a show on my double album and book called Burden of the Beat the Eyelid Movie. So I just want to quick say a thanks to my friends in Indonesia. Selamat pagi, selamat sore, selamat malam, apa kabar? Makasih banyak, and I'm glad to have you listening to the show tonight, and welcome from America.
Well, tell us about your book, Guitarlo, in a nutshell. Tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, right, in a nutshell, Guitarlo is a 348-page memoir that is broken up into 28 stories that chronicles 60 years of my life. Guitarlo is about the horseshoes and hand grenades existence of an unlikely baby boom anti-hero who has a knack for falling into unusual points in history, and through that experience, reinvention, adaptability, forgiveness, and reconnection take on new meaning. Yeah, I mean, sort of like along the lines there of like Forrest Gump or even the movie Little Big Man. So from my beginnings as a 15-year-old runaway during the height of the hippie movement at Woodstock, to my involvement in the 80s Minneapolis music scene, to Nelson Mandela's New South Africa, to a late-in-life reverse immigration on Bali, the book is a there and back 360-degree dialogue at trying to understand what I call the What Now Highway. So like you said, Liz, along the way I meet many historical characters that include California poet Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Hunter Thompson, the Merry Pranksters, Jesse the Body Ventura, Prince, billionaire Clement Stone, the Native American warriors Russell Means and Dennis Banks, and as like you said, I was the manager for Sean Phillips for 18 years. So the story begins with a prologue in present-day 2008 when the Great Recession decimated the economy and like 15 million Americans lost their jobs.
Including you.
Right. So many baby boomers like me in their 50s and 60s found themselves in trouble. So I was 54 years old when the crap hit the fan. I had been out of work for 2.5 years. I lost everything. I hit rock bottom. My options were limited. But it wasn't my first time experience with being rock bottom, which is documented throughout the book. But late in life, I didn't want to go there again. I had a choice now at age 57 to take my chances here in my limited savings or take a leap of faith and try my luck on a total reboot, reinvention journey in a foreign country. Well, I chose the latter. And was I crazy? Well, I let the reader decide. So from there, the first half of the book is a recounting of my life from the 1950s through to 2015. The second half of the book circles back to where the prologue ends, present day as wandering digital nomad in Indonesia.
One of the things that you talk about is the hitchhiking trip you took where you met Hunter S. Thompson and the Merry Pranksters, like on the same day, was it? It sounds amazing.
It wasn't on the same day, but it was on the same trip.
On the same trip?
Yeah. That was somewhere in the middle of Ohio.
Hunter S. Thompson picked you up?
After the Cowboys tried to kill me. Yeah, that's right. So first I was picked up by Hunter Thompson, who was driving to New York from Aspen. I didn't know who Hunter Thompson was. I don't think anybody did. His book, Hell's Angels, had come out in 1967, so this was 1969. And he made a joke about finally getting paid for the book. I don't know what he was just being sarcastic or what, but I had never seen that book before until he handed it to me. I didn't know who he was until he gave me the book. And then I showed it to my friends when I got back. And they went, "Oh my God, you met Hunter Thompson." I was, yeah, well, okay. So that's true. This was all en route to Woodstock when I was 15 years old.
And then you landed a ride on Forward, right? The Magic Bus?
The Further. Okay.
Further, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It doesn't matter, forward or further. Yeah, the bus.
They wouldn't have cared.
Yeah, the Magic Bus. I did get picked up by a psychedelic painted bus. I had no idea what it was. I had not read Tom Wolfe, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test yet. I didn't know what that bus was, but on the front of the bus, on the grill, it said The Further, and the doors opened, and the driver, it turned out to be Babs, who's still alive today, and I did not know who that was, and he wanted to know where I was going. I said, I'm going to Woodstock, and I showed him my poster. And he goes, "Okay, we're going there. Hop on board." And so I rode with that group of the pranksters. That was not all the original pranksters I learned. Like Mountain Girl was not on that bus. But it was a group of other collection of weirdos that they started in Haight-Ashbury and were going across country to Woodstock. So I rode to Woodstock with the pranksters, and when we pulled in, we all went our separate ways, but I met up with them later during campsite get-together things.
Well, that's one of your 28 stories. You talk about the structure being 28 different stories, and I'm wondering.
That is one story. Yeah.
That is one story, and
Yeah.
I was delighted to have coffee with Arlo before we came upstairs, and he was talking about Joseph Campbell and the Hero with 1,000 Faces, and how you had brought that idea into the 28 stories.
Yes, the hero quest paradigm. That's
Yes.
true. Yeah, that's right.
And
So each story is a model of the hero quest,
right.
and there's also a theme that runs through each of the 28 stories. So they are separate stories at different times in my life, but there's a central theme that connects them all, and what that theme is it's a Zen metaphor, a very old ancient Zen metaphor. I don't know who wrote it, but it's the story about the two buckets. So in the Zen story of the two buckets, one bucket is born perfect and one bucket is flawed. So as the carrier fills both buckets at the stream of life every day, he carries them back to his house to find the flawed bucket leaked and was empty. So the flawed bucket questions its value in life. And the guy carrying the bucket says, well, okay, the full bucket is full, and you're empty, but look behind you. And so behind the flawed bucket, the path was covered with flowers. So the flawed bucket had a value in life. So the story, all my stories follow that metaphor. So it's kind of a flawed bucket.
Book.
Okay, yeah. And I have a flawed bucket then. So my bucket leaked identity. My bucket leaked my home. My bucket leaked my family, my friends, and my memories. So the things that make us a full bucket leaked. And I talked about that in each story.
Would you call your book a, quote, spiritual memoir, or do you think it's more of a journey with some spiritual aspects?
Both, I think. You know, I one time I Googled all the subgenres of memoir, and I felt, okay, it's a little bit of that, and it's a little bit of this, and they all kind of fit in there. So a spiritual journey memoir, yeah, it's part of that. There is part of that in there. There's a sort of a quest in trying to figure out who I am. Like, what's with this flawed bucket? Do I have a value in this life, and what is it? And so why do I keep starting over again? So, that game you might have played when you were a kid called Slide.
Chutes and Ladders?
Chutes and Ladders, yeah. So my life is like chutes and ladders. I just climb up that ladder, just shoot right back down to the bottom.
I like that.
So
But then you keep getting back up again.
every
though,
one
Arlo.
of my stories is about climbing up that ladder and shooting back down, starting over again. So you could say that Guitarlo is a reinvention memoir because it's always about starting over again. One of my good friends, who's a well-known author, Luis Alberto Urrea, who wrote the American Book Award, Nobody's Son, he called me a pugilist. That means boxer.
Right.
Yeah, as he says, Arlo, you're a boxer. You keep getting back up. So I think there's a lot of that in there.
And what made you decide to write the book? I mean, a lot of us have that life story of getting back, especially I think our age have a lot of up and down kinds of things. What made you decide to write the book?
That's so true. One reader said that this was a must-read for all baby boomers. It started out as a poem to my daughter. So when I lost everything and didn't know where I was going to go or where I was going to live, and you told me that happened to you too, how you ended up in Minneapolis. So when I left and I was sitting in Bali, separated from my daughter, I wrote a poem about us. And the book started from that poem. So I was sort of writing to her. And how the book got going from there is I published one story in a local magazine called the Ubud Community Magazine. And it got good reader response, and people asked me if I had more stories. And then, so I started to write more stories. And with the help of volunteer editors, we put it together from there.
Who inspired you? What writers inspired you?
Okay. Well, there's too many to name.
Well, of course. Well, there's Ferlinghetti first.
All authors say that, don't they? Of course, Lawrence Ferlinghetti. I mean, he was a huge influence on me when I was a teenager, and I wrote to him. He was my pen pal. He wrote back. He helped me, encouraged me during a very rough time of my life. But I'm a big fan of the anti-hero. I mean, I have a great identity with Holden Caulfield or Huckleberry Finn, Billboard Baggins, Man-Child in the Promised Land, Basketball Diaries, Kaffir Boy. I mean, the don't-haves, the misfits, the flawed, those are my heroes. So I really identify with that.
Did you like Kerouac, or was he not one of your heroes?
Well, also, I was very heavily influenced by American experience authors like Kerouac and Henry Miller, and classic authors like Toni Morrison, Virginia Woolf, Steinbeck, and a lot of heavy mysticism in there by Huxley and Herman Hesse. And even comic book authors like R. Crumb. I pulled a lot of influence by them. One reader described my writing as being a cross between what happens if you mixed Groucho Marx with Herman Hesse. Okay.
That's pretty accurate, actually. I read the book twice, so it spoke to me for sure. It spoke to me for sure. There's one image that I just loved, and maybe you can talk some about this. It's just a simple image about when you're going to St. Louis, and you're on the Greyhound bus, and you looked in the window and looked out to see the landscape, and what you saw was your own face in the reflection.
Yeah.
That seems kind of metaphorical to me.
It was, and that was inspired by Huckleberry Finn, actually.
How so?
That was when Huck Finn was running away, as I was doing on that trip. That was the first time I ran away when I was 13, and I come from a broken home. My parents fought. They're both deceased now. They died a day apart. So when Huck Finn was out in the river, in the dark, in the fog, wondering where he was going to go, a ferry boat crashed into the boat, and that's where I got that idea.
Cool. Well, it seems like during parts of your life you've been running from things, but I get the sense now that you're sort of running to things. Still running, but running toward something in your life rather than trying to escape things. Does that feel accurate? It's what I get from the end of the book, that there is some beauty and excitement coming up for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, this story doesn't have, or the book does not have a conclusionary ending.
Right.
Like a novel might have an ending. This memoirs sometimes don't have endings. It's just a continuation. So this is a continuation of whatever my quest consists of, and I end the memoir with, I'm going to throw my guitar and see what's going to happen next.
Right, that's the last line, as I recall.
Yeah, and which is literally what happened. So I got very involved in the Indonesian music scene. I created an Indonesian label called Indojazia, and I have an Indonesian podcast and blog. And Indonesians are very keen to know about Minneapolis music. Very quickly, the co-owner of one of the largest independent labels in Indonesia, is called D Majors Records, and he came to Orfolk Jokopus and collected as many 80s punk records as he could. So you'd be surprised how well known Minneapolis underground rock music is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Sin Collins would be aware how people around the world know.
Around the world think of it.
Know that, and you would never think about this. The country's largest Muslim population in the world is listening to Minneapolis punk rock.
Wow.
Just think about that for a second.
That's
Doesn't
pretty
quite
cool.
fit the image of what we think of Muslims, but they're,
Listening to the punk rock.
yeah.
Well, Arlo, it's been great talking to you. We are out of time. Amazingly enough, we could go on forever.
That
but
was a quick 30 minutes.
that
it
was a quick 30 minutes. Actually, 27. But anyway, thank you so much.
You've been an amazing host, Liz, and thanks for setting this up months and months ago when I contacted you from Jakarta, and all the staff. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot.